Hello, good evening, and welcome to 2020 Vision, your East London news programme. And we have a packed programme tonight. Our guest tonight is Julian Sharpe, a former councillor from Tower Hamlets. And good evening, Julian.
Evening, Jenny. Thank you very much for having me.
I see that you have your bookline study in the background, and I have my curtain. So that's a different approach. Anyway, let's get on with it.
What we describe piles of books.
Yes, I'm sure that's what it is, really. Now, today we've got a packed show. We're going to get on with it, but really today there's so many topics buzzing around in East London that we really do encourage you to ring in today, because we need a bit of input from you. So our number is very easy to remember. It'll come up on the screen from time to time. 0208 12345 07. Not that I remember it, I have to look it up every time, but nonetheless, it's there for you. So ring in. If you're watching the live stream on the Vodcast Facebook page, then you'll see the number there as well. So first of all, then we're going to start with just a sad reminder. We can't let 7/7 pass without remembering that 15 years ago, 56 people lost their lives in London. 4 people who had taken explosive devices into London and set them off on various forms of London transport, and 52 passengers. So today we remember those 52 passengers who died and the 700 or more people who were injured in the attacks in Aldgate, Edgware, King's Cross and Tavistock Square. And part of having a news programme like this and talking about the news and what we can do to campaign is part of trying to stop that as an approach to change. So we remember all those affected by that attack today. And now we're going to move on and look at, first of all, I think the most gripping topic this week, for those of us who live in Tower Hamlets at least. We've had a strike. Julian, do you remember? You were on the council. Do you remember having a strike before?
Not when I was on the council, no. I mean, I think it just shows how Tower Hamlets workers have been really pushed to the edge and over by these changes to their contracts, their terms and conditions. I mean, let's remember, only yesterday they were effectively all sacked. They were all sacked. And then, as I understand it, re-employed on worse terms and conditions of employment. So it's just astonishing, really, how any council can do this at this time, during this coronavirus crisis, when an awful lot of council workers have been putting in the extra mile to make sure residents of Tower Hamlets have been looked after and are safe, under the current crisis. So it's absolutely unbelievable.
Yes, we did invite John Biggs to come on the programme and talk about why he felt it was necessary for the council to impose these changes on the workforce. There was a time when he used to reply, or the communications office used to reply to our requests. Now they don't. So we've had no reply from them at all, despite our request for him to appear. So I can only assume he is once again having to wash his hair and is not available to come on the programme. So, and you see John tomorrow. Those of you who do, have a look and see how clean his hair is, and we can try to work out what he's doing. Now they, of course, would say that it's not really, they haven't really sacked the council. They've offered, the workers, they've offered some new terms and conditions. They've negotiated for 18 months. And because the workers haven't agreed the changes, they're now imposing them. Nobody's actually scurried around the borough with redundancy notices in that grotesque chaos that Neil Kinnock once described. It's just a little change. How would your trade unionist, Julian, what would you say to that beyond the word poppycock?
Well, that's not a bad word to use, I think. Perhaps I might use a bit stronger word if I could. Yeah, these days they don't have to hire taxis to scuttle around the borough. These days they just do it all online, don't they? if anything, it's a lot worse, much worse. I mean, um, uh, one of the councillors has put in a report, I think, about this, and they compare it to. They say, well, okay, if previous council leaders, or leaders of the Labour group, people like Julian Mainwaring, for example, or others, if they're in charge, can you imagine them actually going through all this and, as I said, sacking people and re-employing them? It just beggars belief. I think what I mean, the workers themselves, Unison have had, as I understand it, 2 ballots of their members, and each time, the package, so-called Tower Rewards, Tower Robbery, I think is the hashtag that the union's been using, was that's what it is, was they are robbing Tower Hamlets workers of rights. But they've rejected that twice. So you'd think if the management of Tower Hamlets Council had an ounce and sense, they would try to address the concerns of workers and actually address them. But clearly they haven't been prepared to do that.
No, let's just put this in context. I mean, on the one hand, the executive mayor in Tower Hamlets, John Biggs, says, it's nothing to do with him. It's just a managerial change. The management have just decided to modernise the terms and conditions. And we've been looking, haven't we, for any sign of dissent. Both Labour parties, I think, have opposed the new terms and conditions, but the mayor hasn't felt it necessary to take that opposition on board. And we wondered what Tower Hamlets councillors thought of the executive mayor's decision. And I was very surprised, I don't know if you were, to see that 10 councillors did actually join together and issue an open letter. And it's a bit of a roll of honour. So I'm just going to read their names out. This open letter calling on the mayor to reconsider has been signed by councillors Shah Amin, Shad Chowdhury, Mark Francis, of course, who's got a very proud record of speaking out when he sees injustice. Tariq Khan managed to sign it as well. James King, Ayas Mia, Victoria Obaze. And Victoria has had a while possibly not speaking out while she was in the role of speaker. So I think everyone's very pleased to see that Victoria Obaze has acknowledged that this is quite a detrimental move against women and workers and black workers. So good on you, Victoria. Mohammed Papu and Gabriella Salva McCallan, those are the councillors. There's some other councillor as well from the Isle of Dogs. We don't really like him very much, so I won't read his name out. So that's the councillors on the roll of honour who've managed to sign the letter. And so I think all we can do is say, if your councillor is not among them, then contact them and ask them to add their name to the open letter, really. So have you had the chance to speak to any of those councillors, Julian? Find out what their concerns are?
Not directly, no. But I mean, all kudos to those councillors who have signed that letter. I think it's given the way Tower Hamlets Council and certainly some of the ways that the Labour group of councillors is run, I think it's a very, very brave decision by all of them to sign that letter, and they should be congratulated.
They should. And can you spot the common theme? Have you spotted that? To that list of councillors?
Enlighten me, Jenny. Enlighten me, please.
They're all councillors who are not in receipt of payment, special responsibility allowances that are allocated by the mayor.
That's okay. Well, that perhaps explains a lot. But can I also say as well, and it is worth saying in the context of this letter, that is it Gabby McClellan, Sylvia McClellan? I think she deserves special congratulations. I believe she organised this letter. I helped to organise it. It was one of the prime movers behind it. And I don't think it would have happened without Gabby. So I think, of all those councillors, say they all should be congratulated. Let's be fair. But Gabby especially, I think, did a special mention because she is leading the fight against, these monstrous changes on the council in the Labour group of councillors. So she should especially be congratulated.
Well, it's very good to see that one of the councillors is following the policy of the Labour Party and going further to help other councillors follow that policy as well. So good that Councillor Salva McCallan is leading the opposition. But then again, is it really opposition? Can you really oppose something that you're against anyway? So something in that. What worries me, I think what again is quite a good contrast, I just have to look at my notes here. At the same time this week, Tower Hamlets has announced that it is £35 million short. It's got a shortfall of £35 million in its budget for the first quarter. So they reckon they've gone £35 million over their budget for the first quarter of the year. And this is their response, cutting back on the paying conditions of people that they said were heroes just a few weeks ago. You're a hero, we're short of money, please will you pay for the crisis? So that's the response. Now, in contrast, Redbridge Council is just estimated that it's going to be £45 million over budget, not 35, £45 million over budget, although that is over the course of the year, not just the first quarter. Do you know what Redbridge's response is?
No, please tell me.
Redbridge have on their website a petition, and Redbridge is asking all their residents to sign a petition to the government asking for that funding shortfall to be met. And I think that's such a contrast between taking it out on your workers and actually asking your residents to join you in a public campaign. Why can't Tower Hamlets be doing that?
No, absolutely. I mean, they seem intent upon attacking their own workforce rather than, as you say, Jenny, appealing to the government for the money. I mean, clearly, we know those of us who looked at the budget for this year for the council in January before the coronavirus crisis hit us all. The council were heading towards a deficit then, and many of us warned that further cuts are on the way. And of course, the coronavirus has put even a bigger hole in council's finances. So you think, well, why don't the council, as you say, appeal to the government? Say, this is what councillors have done in the East End, in Tower Hamlets, on other occasions. I mean, most famously in Poplar in the 1920s, when Poplar Council was short of money, and the council said, well, okay, better to break the law than to break the poor, and appealed to the national government for more money and launched a campaign, as we all know, which ended up in councillors going to prison. So, those are the sorts of steps that, Tower Hamlets Council should be taking. Not just saying, oh, well, we're short of money and therefore, let's sack our workforce and take them on at the worst terms and conditions. So perhaps sometime in the future, the redundancies will be even cheaper. It's, you think, is this a responsible Labour council? Council, who was elected to defend the poor and the weak. Is this really what they were elected to do? I don't think so.
I mean, that's a good comparison, in terms of with the Poplar Borough Council and how they behaved before. And it reminds me of an early meeting I attended when I came to Tower Hamlets. I think it must have been about 1985, 1986, when councils were again campaigning because of lack of government funding. It was a time when the Tory government introduced the rate capping process, more control from central government. And I went to a meeting in Pope John House on East India Dock Road. Must be about 300 people there, and they were talking about what our councillors could do. And all the talk was around, should the councillors break the law? Should the councillors set a deficit budget or what? And the councillors were very concerned that they might have to go to jail. And literally one woman, and she was a rather older woman, stood up and said, I don't know what all the fuss is about. Last time they sent our councillors to jail, we just marched down there and got them back. I feel so privileged that I was actually part of the that link of that memory that that activist had. But that was in the 80s. That was 40 years ago.
Well, I mean, if the Labour councillors we have here, minus the 10, I suppose, showed half the amount of spirit and determination that old lady showed in the 80s. I think we'll be in a very different position. I think a lot better position, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, obviously, Mayor John Biggs has decided not to come and on air and defend the actions, which he says are of council management. And council management, I think, obviously are benefiting from the experience of a relatively new chief executive who's worked for many years in Tory-controlled boroughs, and I'm sure is bringing the benefit of that experience to Tower Hamlets and making us all think rather differently. And I've just been made aware here, I haven't read this yet, so it's a bit dangerous, but there's a message that Mr. Will Tuckley has sent to all staff. I don't think Mr. Tuckley was very keen on the strike. I don't think he appreciated the support for the strike ballot quite as much as one might have expected. So I see that he's obviously the council, because there was a strike over 3 days, organised sort of emergency safeguarding measures, and he's said to staff he's thanking the staff for ensuring there was minimal disruption to services. So thanking staff for carrying on and making sure the strike didn't affect anything. I can't believe it didn't affect anything. He says it's encouraging to see that so far a few hundred staff have chosen to take strike action, which is far outweighed by around the 1,400 members of staff who have signed and accepted the new contract. Well, I know new staff who've signed their new contracts and they had very little information to go on. So I'm not sure I agree with Mr. Tuckley there. Anyway, he's saying that new contracts have now begun. And we've got to all move forward after 18 months of trying to seek a resolution. We welcome back to work those who are taking strike action. We welcome them back on Wednesday, the 8th of July. Well, I think he's missed the point there. So that's 3 days of strike action we've had, and there's now a further notification of 3 more strike days. Wednesday the 15th, Thursday the 16th, and Friday the 17th. That's notification being given of 3 more strike days. So basically, that's a bit of a he's warning staff he won't accept annual leave requests to cover those dates, and various other things. But he's basically saying he's going to try to stand. It's disappointing that they continue to strike, he says, whilst we are responding to the pandemic and withdrawing staff in service areas that support our most vulnerable residents. I think he's written that wrong. We are responding to the pandemic and we are withdrawing staff in service areas that support our most vulnerable members. I think he's got that the wrong way. The wrong way around, but still.
But I mean, it's just wrong there. I mean, anybody who was at the Unison held an online virtual picket, they called it, as an online rally, Friday lunchtime, and I think I had another one yesterday lunchtime to coincide with the first and second days of the strike. On the first at the first rally, Apsana Begum, the MP for Poplar Limehouse, spoke in support of the strike. But also so did the General Secretary of Unison, Dave Prentice. And he said there that the Mayor, John Biggs, is wrong. He is wrong in pursuing this. And I thought it was a very powerful message from one of the most powerful trade unionists in this country, that Tower Hamlets Council and Mayor John Biggs has it wrong on this issue. And so on Monday there's another great rally. I thought the best thing about the 2 online rallies, the virtual pickets as they're being called, where I thought the voices of the ordinary workers on the picket line, who were able to using Zoom as we all use these days, able to dial into the rally and say what they really think. About Tory rewards and how they feel let down by this council, by the mayor, in doing this at such a sensitive and delicate time. So I thought that was really good and really powerful, and I think the hope of everybody was that the strike action would force, I suppose, Tower Hamlets Council back to the negotiating table, that they're prepared to see sense, But clearly, that message from Will Tuckley means, they're not, at this stage, they're not prepared to compromise. So I think, the union has no option but to call further days of strikes. And the hope is, of course, before the strikes happen, that Tower Hamlets Council will see sense, so there won't be any need for the strikes. I think everybody thinks that way. But, we'll see what happens. And one more thing, Jenny, sorry, before you come back, is that, the strikes have had a big impact. And I know on Friday, I think there was a picket line at the refuge depot, not far from where I live, actually, near East India, Dila. And, a lot of the refuge lorries were prevented from going out. So yesterday, my understanding is that the council actually called police to the picket lines when, at the same place, the same depot. And a couple of people on the pickets were actually arrested, for picketing or for helping the picketers. So you do question, the hardline tactics that Tower Hamlets Council are pursuing. And, for a Labour Council to be using the Tory anti-union laws to try and break this dispute is, I think, despicable. It's absolutely appalling.
Well, that news about the council sending police in and the police arresting people on the picket line, that doesn't really chime with Will Tuckley, the chief executive's reassurances that there's only a few hundred people on strike and everybody else is being responsible and dealing with the COVID pandemic. There's something doesn't really match there.
Absolutely.
So, that's it.
And in these rallies, you can see the enthusiasm for the strike against the workers.
But if you're listening, if you're a Tower Hamlets worker, you're probably not listening if you're a Tower Hamlets worker, because you've just been on strike for 3 days and you're probably absolutely exhausted and you've gone to bed. But if you've been supporting the strike, give us a call in. And I think that's it. It's the 7th day. We've got 10 days then to approach the remaining councillors. 10 have signed the letter. There's 32 Labour councillors to go. So if you haven't signed that letter yet, why? What is it that makes you think that this is the right way forward? So contact your councillors and let them know. Do ring in if you've been watching that strike. If you want to talk about if Tower Hamlets Council is taking the right response. And we're going to come back in a minute and look at how another step that the Tower Hamlets Council has been taking, which again is sort of quite different from character. But first of all, we're going to take just a moment off to remember that things are not just going wrong in Tower Hamlets. There are other places across the world where people are suffering as well. So I'm just going to ask the back room to put the photo up that replaces them. Thank you. As you can see, we might all remember that the State of Israel has announced that it's going to annex parts of the West Bank, which is a very worrying development and has had a massive wave of international opposition, and has been endorsed by Donald Trump. So that's a problem. But people in Palestine, people in the West Bank need a bit of solidarity, and our local Palestine Solidarity Campaign and Jenin Friendship Association have organised this online rally on Saturday. So do take the date down, Saturday 25th of July, 2 to 3:15 p.m. And you can go online, look for the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, East London branch, and take down the Zoom link. And do try to join in and learn about. I think it's fantastic that one of the speakers is going to be actually live from Palestine. I hope that comes off. So do have a listen and find out what's going on over there, where people have been really driven to extremes in terms of defending very basic rights. So hopefully people will join us. There's a while to go yet, so we'll plug that again in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so one thing I want to just go on to, there's a bit of a change coming over Tower Hamlets Council, I think. And today our attention is drawn by the Labour homelessness campaign to the fact that Tower Hamlets Council has issued notices to those people who are homeless and who have been accommodated so they can take care of themselves during the pandemic. And those notices say that if they're not a priority case, and of course most of them are not, what's the word in statutory, not a statutory priority case, basically their accommodation will come to an end, so they'll be back out on the streets. I think that's from the 31st of July. And it's just such a cold letter. This is a decision on your homelessness application, section da-di-da-di-da. We have decided that we owe you a duty to help you find somewhere else to live, but we do not owe you a duty to provide temporary accommodation while we help you to find somewhere else to live. So what does the council think is going to happen? You know, there's always talk about second waves and maybe local lockdowns. Are we not just going to encourage a local lockdown if we put those homeless people back on the streets again where they can't isolate? It's really quite shocking.
I mean, one of the consequences, I think, of this coronavirus crisis, I mean, it just shows how simple some of these things can be, because because of it, as we know, the government tried. This is a Conservative government. Tried to tackle the homeless crisis, and I'm not saying it resolved it or solved it even on a temporary basis, but it made big inroads into solving the problem of the homeless, and it just shows how easy it could be done with a little bit of political will and a bit of money, because everything costs money, but a bit of money, and they could do it. I'm not saying it's perfect, I'm not saying it's resolved, I'm not saying whatever, but it made a big impact. And one of the things coming out of all this is that we want to change things, change the world, make things better. And this is one example where clearly the homeless problem was partially resolved. So you think, well, a little bit of political will, a little bit of money, as I said, surely they could do it after the lockdown is beginning to end, but they're just not prepared to do that. And as you say, it's a cold, heartless approach to this sort of problem.
I mean, I don't remember Tower Hamlets. I remember Tower Hamlets taking some very stupid decisions in the past, but I just don't remember this sort of this heartlessness before. Now I'm just looking now. At Excel, because I mean, if you ever needed an example that something like homelessness is, and solving it is all a question of political will rather than something sort of natural, it's how the army was able to go into the Excel Centre and turn it into an emergency hospital. So why can't we go into Excel and turn it into a temporary shelter for the homeless? It's somewhat unclear. I'm just looking at the Excel website here, trying to find out if events are now going ahead in the Excel Centre, if they want it back as an exhibition site. It says on the actual main website that you have to check with the organisers of each event to see if it's going on. I'm looking at the first event here.
My understanding is I think it's been used for other purposes.
The original purpose.
I saw something in the media. No, not the original purpose, because obviously they can't have exhibitions there for the time being. And it's kind of the Nightingale Hospitals in mothballs, just in case it needs to be used sometime down the line.
Well, if it's sat there,
but you say
put some homeless people in it.
Absolutely. I mean, homelessness is a complex issue. Obviously, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that people don't have anywhere to live. And opening up the Excel Centre for homeless people and also allowing them to live there in some way, may not be a total solution to the problem, but it'll make a big dent into it.
Right.
It's empty, it's there. You think, why not just use it?
just seemed a good idea to me, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, as I say, the Labour homelessness campaign is trying to campaign on these on this this issue, and there's a letter that somebody at the town hall. Oh, no. The chief executive. You'd have thought the chief executive was a very busy person, wouldn't you? But he seemed to find some time to write to a local homeless campaigner with his policy, the council's policy on homelessness, and he's copied his letter to John Biggs. That's a very unusual way round, isn't it? Normally you expect strategy to be set by the mayor and the chief executive acts it, but it seems to be the other way around. And again, he's making quite clear, this is for migrants. He's had a letter on the 14th of April. And he's replying on the 16th of April, and he's saying apologies for the delay in replying. I don't know what that's about. But he's saying that Tower Hamlets Council will assist people who have no recourse to public funds, or even if they have no local connection. But it's a short-term arrangement until things normalise, when the accommodation offered will be brought to an end. It's literally, so we're going to stack the baked bean tins in the yard until it starts raining, and then we'll bring them indoors, isn't it? Or possibly even the other way around. It's just
yeah, you think this would be an ideal opportunity to show some compassion and to actually, offer people shelter, when they don't have it.
Well, as I said before, if you want to join in our conversation, add some information in. You can ring into the studio on 0208 12345 07. So give us a call. Otherwise, Julian and I will have to start being terribly controversial to try to encourage you. I need to flag up now as well. On Friday, great news. I don't know if you were aware of this, Julian. It's National Kebab Day, and again, you can Google that, and it's the Hungry Lion, is it? But they're actually offering a 30% discount to a large number of kebab houses. So if you want to claim your discount voucher, you need to go online today or tomorrow and claim your discount voucher, and you can have your 30% off and have your celebratory kebab on Friday, and help the food industry.
You'll have to broadcast the details, Jenny.
Yeah, well, those are the only details that I've got, I'm afraid. Right. I'm just going to check with our back room. I'm getting a little bit of echo here. So I hope that's not coming across on air. Is that a caller coming through that I see? If it is, I have to switch. Oh, hello there. Who's calling?
Oh, hi there. It's Ahtisham Hawk from Blackwell and Kiwi.
Hello.
Hi, Ahtisham.
Yes. Oh, is it? Oh, yes. Yes, you're the double-crossing councillor, aren't you? Who sat down with me and discussed who to vote for in the Labour Party, and then went off and voted for some useless tossing right-winger, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't think I particularly want to speak to you, actually, Ahtisham. I think you can go and get some Tory channel to give you airtime. I don't think we need to speak to you direct.
Sorry?
Yes. I don't think you're worth talking to, Ahtisham, really. So I don't think we need to bother with that. Why doesn't somebody else ring in and say something useful about why they support?
Just as a constituent and also as a councillor, because I understand you're discussing the topic of tower rewards.
We are discussing the topic of tower rewards. I note you're a late convert to the idea of criticising Mayor Biggs, but I don't think we particularly want to hear what you've got to say, because we can't trust you, Ahtisham. We can't believe anything you say. I know that you're always trying to follow things that are in your interest, but
that's quite. I mean, that's the issue. That's the issue. Be open to the ideas. I'm glad to see that you're running this program, but if you're not even open to even listening to someone's opinion because you have a prejudgment on their position, then that's very sad, Jenny. And I think it's not necessarily comradely, or it's not necessarily to the best interest of the people of this borough, or even the viewers of your program.
We love talking to our viewers, and we love listening to our viewers. It's just you we've got something against, Ehtisham. So just try to justify yourself. Why are you suddenly a convert to the idea of coming out and explaining to John Biggs where he's gone wrong? You haven't managed to do that for the last 2 years, so what's made you move now?
Well, I think you will find that whenever there was an opportunity and I disagreed, I did not hesitate to disagree with not only John Biggs, but I think this is quite a fundamental issue. We may have difference of opinion on many other matters, Jenny, but this is something that's very fundamental in terms of achieving a collective agreement which has not been agreed. And obviously the unison decided to strike. And we're entitled to offer our solidarity with them. And you must have seen 10 councillors coming out supporting the strikers. So, I'm not sure how to sort of really react to the attitude that you feel. I mean, you're also one of my constituents in Blackwell and Cuba Town. So you'd rather be. I mean, at least you should be acknowledging the fact, that I, as a Labour councillor, managed to come out and say that we support the trade unions here. So I'm really, what can I say? I mean, the attitude that you're showing is that something again doesn't really help in increasing the movement. Doesn't really help the movement itself. Even if you call yourself a socialist, and if you're not even willing to hear from your comrades, yes, they may disagree with you on one or two things, but there are many other things that they agree with you.
Okay, Ehtisham, so why have you now come out and opposed the strike? You've been a mayoral advisor, taking his money for I don't know how long. So now why did you ring up? Did you just ring up to insult? To try to insult me?
I just want to ask Comrade Sharpe, Julian Sharpe, like what should be and what could be the next actions that not just the unison, but we as probably local branch or as Labour Party members can take to make sure that this imposition of new terms and conditions doesn't go ahead.
Well, it's not a Labour Party show, Ehtisham. So I think probably the best thing we can do is how many more councillors can you get to sign the open letter? Can you actually persuade anyone to agree with you?
Yes. So at least 4 or 5 of them. So you probably know Councillor Gabriela Salva-McClellan was quite instrumental, and I was the second person in organising the signatures. And it was quite a courageous thing to do, and the right thing to do, of course. So yes, I've spoken to other councillors, Councillor Victoria Abazi, for an example. I've spoken to Councillor Tariq Khan, Councillor Deepa Das, Shashwell, So yeah, Jenny, you'll find actually, some of us actually, from our point of view, within our context, we're trying our best to do the right thing.
It has to be a first time for everything. Do you want to chip in, Julian?
Well, I think it's you kind of said an awful lot of it, Jenny. I think Councillor Ehtisham, needs to persuade, 15, 20 other councillors to sign that letter in the first instance. And also he needs to persuade Mayor John Biggs to reverse this disastrous policy. I'm sure Ehtisham knows. Tower Hamlets Council is looking like a laughing stock. In the online rally on Friday, there were people there from all over the country. I think from Birmingham, from East Anglia, as I remember, from the north of England. Who are aware of this bonkers thing that Tower Hamlets Council is doing. So, I think, Councillor Atishan has a job of work in his hands, and the other councillors. He needs to persuade them to sign the letter. He also needs to ensure as well that the strikers and the unions get full solidarity and support in their struggle going forward. Because, if there is another round of strikes take place in a couple of weeks' time, unions may be under some pressure. So I think it's incumbent upon the councillors to support them.
Well, it's nice to see. I suppose it's nice to see Councillor Atishan doing something. It's a fairly rare occurrence. I suppose that at least will cheer us up. I presume he'll be down on the picket line in the next 3 days of strike action. And I see.
Yeah, you'll be glad to hear that I've been there both days. I haven't been there today. I've been there on Friday. I've been there on Monday. Today I didn't go. And also, I did offer sort of my contribution in the rally on second day, on Monday. And it's not just the first thing. You'll find because we cannot necessarily come out publicly and express everything that we say and do within the Labour group, unless obviously if you want me to be suspended from the party. So there are many issues over the years, actually.
Atishan, I'd really like to invite you to tell us everything that happened in Labour group. Tell us now while we're recording.
I can only say the bits that are not necessarily confidential, and I'll not be penalized for.
Because other questions that people might ask.
I can tell you this: the engagement with the Labour group was quite intransparent and was not honest from day one. When this came, I worked for the council for 4 years, Jenny, and when this proposal came forward, right at the beginning of 2019, and I said it very clearly that, look, we want sincere engagement here, but I've been told by John Biggs and others that actually this is just something between the management and the union, and we don't have any role whatsoever here. Which is obviously not true, as we can clearly see John Biggs and clearly supporting the management position here, which I'm very frustrated by, and that has led me to really campaign and get support from other councillors to express our position that not in our name we cannot support this.
So when you voted for Mayor John Biggs's latest cuts budget, when you voted to cut the community language service, that was in your name, was it? When you actually voted in council?
Yeah, you have to say. So right from the beginning, there are many decisions that I have disagreed with within the Labour group, and obviously, if Labour group as a group itself, if we have voted, there are two options that remain. One is to break the whip at the full council meeting and be disciplined and not having a say probably in future on many other matters and motions. Or the other is to go with the collective. And unfortunately, Jenny, probably you would remember when before 2018 election, I did suggest in many arenas within Momentum and many other places that we need as many numbers of councillors as we can have who supported Jeremy Corbyn. But you were the person who really disagreed with it. You said, it's all bonkers, there is no use of it. And every time you found a way to ultimately not hear our voice, but let's not go into that. I'm learning as I progress or as I move forward, I'm learning. And many people may find me at times, not agreeing with you. And often I myself found, I have to be honest with you, is a victim of intimidation and racism to some extent, even from the left. So yes, I have had many strong opinions, but I'm sorry, I have not been, I have not been supported by many comrades who are often out there loud, saying that they want to show solidarity to the Palestinians, Black Lives Matter, and many others. But I was also a victim, and as you know, at least 5 of us councillors, BME councillors, who had to resign from local Momentum, and we have written to Central Momentum, and they have never got back to us. So these are other issues, Jenny. But end of the day, this is what I would suggest. The approach of holier than thou does not work. You or
Are you
I
getting a bit cross,
in one or
Sham?
two things.
Are you remembering
Sorry?
when you remembering when you were asked to leave the Momentum meetings because you shouted down the chair and it was impossible for the meeting to continue in a comedy fashion?
Yes, I was part of that very meeting where you were the very person who actually tried to discriminate a young black and minority ethnic person, and also a young member of Momentum, quite unfairly because he stood against you. And so, let us not go back there, Jenny. It doesn't help the cause. End of the day, no matter what. I think when it comes to fundamental...
Yeah, I think we've had quite enough of giving you a platform, Sham. I'm very pleased that you've chosen to ring this week.
I think
two things have happened.
Never listen.
Two things have happened this week. One is we've had at last, after 3 years, the domestic violence bill has now passed. So we have stronger measures we can take against domestic violence. And Sham has managed to ring into the programme. And he's managed to support the strike and take the credit for organising 9 signatures on the letter. So I think that's quite enough input from you, Sham. Otherwise, the listeners are just going to have too much fun. So.
Yeah. But thank you. I mean, again, that shows, I think, the listeners or the viewers can make up their mind to what sort of attitude you have towards your comrades, who are trying to do their best to make whatever contributions they want to make. So thank you.
Yeah. That's right, Sham. It's I think those. It's a political question, and the more people who meet you, the more people are aware of the intricacies of your politics. So that was an interesting intermission. Anybody else would like to ring up? The number is whatever it was before, 0208 12345 07. So we now need to sort of begin to wrap the programme together, Julian. Are there any other news issues that you wanting to bring up tonight that you wanted to discuss?
All right. Just after that, I'm not one in sort of in being negative about councillors. This is mainly talked about the strike in Tower Hamlets. It's a big issue for Tower Hamlets. Those opposed posing what the council are doing. I think we need to remain united in all this. But nevertheless, Councillor Shams is as the Christian Bible says, if he's without sin, cast the first stone. Councillor Shams certainly not without sin, as those people who know him, will know. So, but as I said, this is not the time to go into all, the ins and outs of all that. This is a time to, stand against what is happening in Tower Hamlets Council. So I think it's a bit of a shame. I think he, his contribution went the way it did. Initially, I think he was trying to be quite positive as far as the council strike is concerned. But there we are. I mean, that's what I think of it anyway.
Yeah, well, let's just give another name check to those councillors who've signed the letter. Let's give a name check to Gabriella Salva McCallan, who organised the letter. Shah Amin, Shad Chowdhury, Mark Francis. I mentioned Tariq Khan as well. James King, Ayas Mia, Victoria Obaze, Mohammed Papu. So congratulations to those councillors. If we haven't read out your councillor's name, hop onto the East London website, East London News website, and have a look for how to contact your councillors. It's in the politics subsection, and email or text your councillors and ask them what they're doing to bring the strike to a positive, the dispute to a positive conclusion. So let's just have a quick check through the other stories across East London. Watch out if you live in Bow. because there's a consultation begun on how to make the streets safer. In other parts of the borough, that's tended to mean close them to traffic, which hasn't necessarily gone down well. So check that out. I haven't looked at it yet, but if you live in Bow, check out that consultation, find out what's going on. If you're heading, as we quickly look around the London boroughs, to Hackney, if you're going to London Fields, which of course is very close to the E2 part of Tower Hamlets, alcohol has now been banned in London Fields, so be aware of that. Something that wasn't on the Tower, hasn't been done yet in Tower Hamlets, in Newham, Mayor Roxana Fiaz has put a statement on the Newham website remembering the victims of the London bombings. So she's alert to that issue, that topical issue as well. And she's also, there's some reporters now come out that's publicised on the Newham website. Perhaps we need to get somebody from Newham to come and talk about it. She's said she remains committed to holding a referendum on governance of Newham, and she's got some new plan for a participatory democracy which can involve people far more in decision making. She thinks that the mayoral system has left a lot of the population feeling they're very remote from where decision making happens, and people should be much closer to the decision making route. So perhaps we need to look at that. Does that impress you, Julian?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I think Roxana was elected on a platform of looking at that. Basically elected on a platform, as I understand it, to do away with the executive Newham anyway. So okay, it's a little late in the day. It's not exactly getting rid of the executive mayor, but I suppose it's a step forward. Of course, we know in Tower Hamlets there have been moves along similar lines to try and I suppose remove the executive mayor and move to some sort of more collective, collegiate form of decision making in the borough, which I would welcome, and I think you would as well. And I think there are still efforts to try and do that as well. I think I saw something recently from former council leader Abbas along those lines.
I thought that was very strange, that letter. It seemed to be just be having a pop at John Biggs, which I know is very tempting, but I wasn't sure if it was an argument about the system or the man.
Well, it didn't seem the most positive approach to this issue, to be honest with you.
Well, he just made all sorts of allegations about what John was or wasn't doing. And I think John's got made a lot of wrong decisions, but to sort of witter on about some of the things it said seemed very strange, especially when there's such an open target of all the decisions that the executive mayor has actually made. And it wasn't really, didn't really look at the question of the of governance of the borough. And I mean, there were enough questions about the governance of the borough when Abbas was the leader. So I thought that was all quite a strange arrangement. But there we are. It's okay. It's your last 2 minutes to ring in, because we are going to bring this to a close now. Do you think, Julian, question to throw at you really, but is there any chance that Unison could win this strike?
Absolutely. Of course they can. As I said, I mean, the council is a laughingstock, and the longer this goes on, the more, the worse it's going to get for the council. So yes, of course, Unison can win this strike. And I think Unison members should realise that. I'm sure that a lot of them do, but they should realise they have support of the residents of the borough. I was hearing reports on the picket lines about the support the strikers were having, the support the picketers were having, about passing cars, beeping their horns, and so on. There wasn't a single voice of opposition to the strike, and people were asking, well, what on earth are the council doing? So yeah, I think they can win it. They have the support of residents of Tower Hamlets. So I think to me it just seems as if the chief executive and the mayor who are just determined to push this through. They don't have the support of anybody else. And the longer it goes on, as I say, the more embarrassing it's going to get for the council and for the mayor. Yes.
Yes, it's clearly not just a managerial issue. Well, Well, I'm sure it's a topic we'll come back to. So tonight we've talked about the tower rewards or tower robberies issue in Tower Hamlets, where the mayor has now, it won't be the chief executive who actually took the decision to do it, I don't think. It must have been the mayor who took the decision to change the terms and conditions, I would have thought. But he won't answer.
I can't imagine the chief executive making this sort of decision without getting the approval of the mayor first.
No,
I just can't imagine. You know,
and
it's not something that happens, is it? I mean, you know.
And it was approved by cabinet, wasn't it? I mean, cabinet. I know that,
absolutely.
That John Biggs, the executive mayor, said that you know, it was all the management decision, nothing to do with him. Yet the cabinet, he said, actually had supported the decision. So when it looked at it, supported it in principle. So that's odd as well, isn't it? Because there must be some cabinet members. I think one of them is actually Councillor Shams Hock's fourth wife, isn't she, in the cabinet now? Maybe
I don't know the number, but yes, she is in the cabinet. Yes.
Oh well, that's the first person you should start talking to. Then, obviously,
I hope he made his own wife actually of the correctness of his position.
I mean, there are many couples in politics and on Tower Hamlets Council who have very different opinions, as we know. But still, it's a target, isn't it? So yes, let's see if we can get some support for that strike going and get Tower Hamlets to withdraw from the brink and reimpose the original terms and conditions. Okay, so we've talked about the Tower Hamlets strike. We've mentioned the Palestine rally. That's on 25th of July, and we'll mention that again in coming weeks.
And people should make a point of registering for that, you know, clearly.
Do you know, actually, it might be an idea to register for it, not to delay on registering, but to register really soon, because there have been some Zoom meetings lately that have actually filled up and people haven't been able to join in after a while. So, okay, yeah, I'll take it back. Register for it now, and we'll remind you as well. And we've also spoken about homelessness in the borough, where Tower Hamlets has warned that rough sleepers can look forward to going back on the streets. I think watch this space, and there may well be a campaign arising trying to turn that around. So I think with that, I think we're probably going to draw this to a close. Thank you for watching. We shall be back next Tuesday, looking a bit further east next Tuesday. Julian will be back with us in 2 or 3 weeks' time, 2 to 4 weeks' time, as one of our regular commentators, and we'll see where we go from there. If you'd like to be a guest on podcast, or if you think there's an issue we should cover or mention, then do get in touch with us over the podcast Facebook page. So thank you for watching. Good night, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.